Hello, today we are looking at measuring and drawing angles. Now, remember, an angle is a measure of turn, how much something has pivoted by. So it is a measure of turn. Now, there are many different units that you can use to measure an angle. We today are going to be using degrees, and we're going to be using this instrument. It's called a protractor. And this is a 180 degree protractor. You can get full 360 degree protractors as well. But you are looking for the certain key features. Every protractor will have a pivot point, a central point. Now in my one, it is a cross. Where the two lines intersect, the middle of that cross is the point where the pivot point of the angle will be placed. We also have a baseline which comes through 0. Now, on protractors, there are usually 2 scales, and the key is whenever you're measuring, you always start from 0. Right, let's have a look at this first example here. Now, I'm going to zoom in on this. There we go. First thing I'm going to do is I'm going to take my protractor, and that central pivot point I'm going to place on the pivot point of the angle. I'm making sure that it's exactly lined up. As you can see through the protractor, the baseline of the angle, and there is a baseline of the protractor going through that 0. What I need to do is I need to move it so that the baseline is lined up as well. Now, if the pivot point has moved, I move the protractor back. I've got to get it absolutely correct. So to recap, the pivot point of the protractor is on the pivot point of the angle. The baseline of the protractor is on the baseline of the angle. Now, when you are measuring, you always start from 0 and go up. Okay, here I've got a choice of starting from 0 or starting from 180. Always start from 0. Now, I don't need to count each individual line, but I just need to do a general 0, 10, 20, it's not as far as 30. So we come back down, and this line here we will extend out. So we know it's going to be above 20. If it was here, it would be 25. It's in fact 26, 27 degrees. So to recap, the pivot point of the protractor is on the pivot point of the angle. The baseline of the protractor is on the baseline of the angle. I start from 0, I go up. We know it's above 20 but below 30. How much exactly? Well, here would be 5, 6, 7. So it's 27 degrees. Next example. Zoom out a little bit. Again, pivot point of the angle, the point where one line turns to the other, and the pivot point of the protractor. So I line it up exactly. This time I'm going to take this baseline. So it doesn't matter which one of the 2 baselines you take, so long as you take one of them. And again, line it up spot on exactly. So pivot point on pivot point, line on line. Now this line here, we're coming through. I'm starting from 0 because it is this angle here that I am measuring. Going round, going round. So it's over 150. Is it 160? I'm not sure, I can't quite see. So what I'm going to use to help me is I'm going to use another straight line to extend it. Now if you need to extend the lines, of course you can. She says looking for a pencil. Now I'm using pen so that you can clearly see what I'm doing. For you, you can use pencil. It's just because I'm working on video. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to extend that line so it's nice and clear. So I've moved the protractor, I go back and do the same steps again. Pivot point, baseline, and I double check it. My head is directly above the protractor so I can see it clearly. Counting round. 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, 60, 70, 80, 90, 100. In fact, it's just under that 160. So it will be 159. Drawing angles is similar in the fact that you will need a baseline, you will need a pivot point, and you need to draw them accurately. So when you're drawing them, make the arm of each angle about 5 centimetres, between 5 and 10 centimetres, depending on what you're working on. I have decided that this is going to be the pivot point here, so I place the pivot point of my protractor. Again, I'm going to zoom in so you can see this really clearly. The pivot point of my protractor is going onto the pivot point of my angle, and again the baseline of my protractor goes onto the baseline of my angle. So that is lined up absolutely perfectly. As you can see, I am measuring 82 degrees. Again, starting from 0, going up. I'm just going to move it down so we can see what we're doing. And I'm going to zoom out a little bit because I've zoomed in a little bit too much. There we go. So 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, 60, 70, 82. So here, there's the 80, there's the 85, 81, 82. Now I'm going to put a little mark on my page. I can then remove the protractor. I then join from the pivot point up to the dot. I've gone through my title. It doesn't matter. Depend if you've got your maths book with you, you can normally fit about 4 per page. If you're doing it on plain paper, again, about 4 per page. Sometimes these might overlap. Don't worry if they do. Right, last one I'm going to look at for today is an obtuse angle. Again, I need my baseline. There's my baseline. Again, like I've stressed before, I'm using pencil. It's clear on the video. You should be using pencil. I have decided that is going to be my pivot point. So again, I take my protractor. I take the pivot point and I line it up exactly. That is just slightly out, so I'm going to move it, and I keep moving it. My head is directly above the protractor. So I can see the pivot point is on the pivot point, the baseline is on the baseline, and we are doing 114 degrees. Again, I start from 0 and I count up. I'm not doing it so that I'm counting each individual one, I'm counting in tens, and then when I get to 110, that's the point I'm going to refine it. 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, 60, 70, 80, 90, 100. 110, 120, so I'm coming back to 110, 114, 1, 2, 3, 4, marking it on carefully. So the 115's there, 114's there, and I've marked it on. I'm then taking it back and making sure that I'm going from my pivot point that I had up to here, and I've drawn it accurately. Now, on both of these questions, I'm actually missing something important. Have a look and think about what I'm missing. I'm in fact missing the arcs. Now the arcs are very important because they clearly show what angle you have measured. Because remember, just because you've got two lines, you have in fact got two angles. You've got one here, one on the outside, one here, one on the outside. So to recap, make sure pivot point to pivot point, baseline to baseline, going from 0, count up, mark it in, draw it in, and remember your arcs.